Last week, I got a message, the kind I get a lot, from a woman in her 30s, confident, thriving, fulfilled in her career. She said, "Last night was awful. I'm so disappointed in myself. I went on another date with this new guy and I had sex. He asked, I said yeah, even though I was feeling so weird about it. But I didn't want to leave, and I really like him, and before I knew it, it had happened." I get to hear these stories as a sex educator, entrepreneur, and group facilitator. And after sitting with over 1,000 women in the past few years, I've heard countless variations of this struggle. The yes we give when we're actually unsure. And it hits close to home because, like many women, I too have had sex when I wasn't a full yes. Like when I was 25, in San Francisco, climbing the corporate ladder at Google, newly single, navigating dating, and calling a car at 2 a.m. to leave someone's house with my mind racing. What just happened? I've been so excited about dating this new person, so I wanted to sleep with them, right? But it all started happening so fast, and it wasn't really quite like I wanted, and I said nothing. Then the next day, lying in my own bed, looking at the ceiling, thinking, what is wrong with me? How can I be a strong and capable woman, a feminist, and still not speak up for what I want? At the time, I thought it was just me, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. In a study of over 7,000 college-age women, over 90% reported that they'd performed undesired sexual acts just to please a partner. Over 90%. And of those women, over 80% reported that they prioritize their partner's pleasure over their own. So it's no surprise that we don't speak up. And also, it's not our fault, because we've never been given examples about how to have conversations about sex. It's not in porn, it's not in romantic comedies, and even if you were lucky enough to have sex ed, you probably didn't get many examples. So when we find ourselves in sexual situations and we're feeling unsure, we often don't say anything at all. And I didn't speak up for the same reason that many women don't speak up. Because we don't want to disappoint our partners, because we don't want to make things awkward, because we don't want to scare someone away. But the one thing I want each of you to know is this. When we speak up and ask for what we want, when we have the potentially uncomfortable conversation about sex, we create space for us and our partners to share what we need and what we might be afraid to say. And most importantly, we give them the opportunity to help us feel good. And if our partners aren't excited to learn what we need to feel good, then we don't need to settle for those partners. But luckily, the conversation is starting to change. And as girls and women, we're starting to hear more empowering messages about our sexuality, our bodies, and our pleasure. Finally, here's one you might recognize. If you're not a hell yes, it's a no. I remember the first time I heard this in the esteemed academic journal known as Instagram. And honestly, it felt like a relief as I read it. And I took to it like a rallying cry. I wrote it on my mirror. I repeated it in my head like a mantra. Because the sentiment behind this is so important. That we deserve to be wholeheartedly enthusiastic about the sex that we're having. That's what it means to give consent, and that's what it means to have good sex. But as I started to use this phrase to navigate my sex life, I realized that the idea was incomplete. Because sometimes it wasn't quite a hell yes, but it definitely wasn't a no. Sometimes it was a let's slow down. And sometimes it was I'm not sure what I want right now. But few of us have frameworks to have these conversations. So when we find ourselves feeling uncomfortable, we say nothing at all. Over the past few years, I've been working on a new frame, one that women can use to get the conversation started, a frame that helps us get more of what we want, even when we're not sure what that is yet. So you remember, if you're not a hell yes, it's a no? Well, it's time for a new version. If you're not a hell yes, it's a conversation. Here's how you do it. The next time things are getting hot and heavy, and you find yourself feeling excited, but maybe a little uncomfortable too, take a moment, take a breath. Remember that you have the power to get the conversation started with the ACE framework. That's ACHE. A is for appreciation. Start by sharing something specific that you appreciate about your partner, something true for you in that moment. For example, I'm so happy to be here with you right now. Your fingers on my arm like that feel so good. Now for C. C is for call it out. And this is where you come right out and say, let's talk about what we're doing here. The goal is not to tiptoe around it, though you might feel a little awkward the first time or with a new partner. But when we initiate the talk, we get out of the conversation in our head and into the real conversation. All right, appreciation and call it out. I'm so happy to be here with you right now. Your fingers on my arm like that feel so good. But I also really want to talk about us being physical. Now, H for history. This is where you get vulnerable, where you share a little bit about your history to give your partner an opportunity to know what's really happening for you. I'll demo. Appreciation, call it out, history. I'm so happy to be here with you right now. Your fingers on my arm like that feel so good. But I also really want to talk about us being physical. In the past, I've sometimes had sex that I wasn't a full yes to, that moved too fast and I was in my head. I don't want that to happen. I love having sex when I know that we can talk about it. And that brings us to E for exactly what you want. And when I say exactly what you want, this is about figuring out at least one thing that might help you feel a little more comfortable. So if you know what you want, share it. And if you have no clue, then simply asking to take things slower is a great place to start. I'll put it all together for a final example. I'm so happy to be here with you right now. Your fingers on my arm like that feel so good. But I also really want to talk about us being physical. In the past, I've sometimes had sex that I wasn't a full yes to, that moved too fast, and I was in my head. I don't want that to happen. I love having sex when I know that we can talk about it. And what I think I want tonight is to just keep making out with you, to keep getting to know you better before we go further. And with that, you've started the conversation. You've shared with power, and you've opened the door for you and your partner to talk about what you desire. If you're not a hell yes, it's a conversation. And when we start that conversation, everybody wins. So the next time things are getting hot and you find yourself in your head, take a moment, take a breath, remember ache. Remember that you can get the conversation started even when you're not sure what you want yet. And then feel the relief of giving yourself permission to share what you're actually thinking. And feel the pleasure of starting to explore what you really want. You deserve this. Every woman deserves this. Every person deserves this. Thank you.